I actually enjoyed the first Life is Strange game. It took Telltale's already tired formula and improved upon it by building a much bigger world to explore, and brought it to life with multiple NPCs with some actual character. It even had an actual gameplay mechanic with time rewinding that kept it from becoming just another talking simulator, with all the conversational engagement of pressing 1 for English when prompted by the synthesized voice on the other end of the call. Well, Life is Strange 2 takes a step back from all that. Several steps back, in fact. They simply pressed 2 for Spanish when it came time to write the plot, then refashioned the gameplay to make it more like the Telltale games they had already left in the dust. I'm willing to wager the most memorable thing about this game in a few months is that I posted this video.
Hey lovebirds. Back from the loony bin?
Hi there. Just checking in to see if you will be available for a scheduled plot development in the next 10 minutes. The Playbox video game console must have been one of those kick-started projects from the looks of it. The controller doesn't even have analog sticks.
Daniel spends hundreds of hours yelling into the mic playing Minecraft with Noah.
Daniel name drops Minecraft so many times it feels like the game is hoping to pick up the license from Telltale. Retrospective sitting makes a return. I'm still not sure why this has become a staple of the series. Introspection happens when you're standing as well. That is not what a jar of mayonnaise looks like. I even looked up what French mayonnaise looks like just in case this was a cultural thing. Mayonnaise jars are the same over there too.
Time to Skype Lila on my laptop.
Who the hell uses Skype in 2016, the year this is set? Get on Discord. By the way, the link to my Discord is down below.
Hold on, okay?
Someone needs to inform Don't Nod that you can begin your story without the local bully harassing someone. Going by the standard this series is set, every superhuman was just a bullied child who was pushed too far one day.
Then go back to your own country.
You can tell what the theme is going to be for this game right off the bat. I never felt beat over the head with a message this much in the first Life is Strange. This game goes to such extremes to set up a situation where a cop misunderstands what's happening and shoots Sean and Daniel's father that I end up siding with the cop. Because from his point of view, the situation looked messed up. First, Daniel splashed the neighbor that was bullying him with fake blood and Sean pushed him over, causing a seizure. So when the cop arrives, he suspects something far worse has happened. None of the actual police shootings this game is drawing upon required more setup than someone wearing a hoodie. In the first Life is Strange, you controlled Max, a girl with the ability to rewind time so she could redo events for a better outcome. The entire story was built around that ability, with her power having unintended side effects that could unleash an even greater tragedy. It also worked mechanically well in the adventure game genre. You could rewind conversations after learning useful information, and use it to solve the occasional puzzle. Telekinesis, on the other hand, is a power about moving objects with your mind, and it isn't even the main character with the power this time, but his little brother. In a game that is 90% talking, there are not a whole lot of opportunities to make use of it. So instead of a gameplay mechanic, you receive a plot device that could honestly be removed from the game and the story would work just as well. Also, you might have noticed this is the exact same event that kicked off the events of the first game, only this time no rewind power to undo it. The plot of the game is predicated on Sean acting like an idiot and running away with his brother instead of giving a statement to the police. Both of them are minors. Their father was just shot and killed by a cop, and there appears to have been an explosion with no possible source. What would they even charge you with? Sean and Daniel would not have gotten very far on foot if the police were pulling up to his house at that moment, especially by walking along main highways near tourist locations like Mount Rainier. This is 2 days later. There would be news broadcasts and police searches. Every car that passed them would possibly alert the police to 2 kids walking down the road.
Why isn't Dad with us, Sean? Doesn't he want to go camping too?
Yes, but I told you that he can't.
Kids can be dumb, but even at Daniel's age, I don't see him buying this story. 2019 has been a better year for games that want to teach you what it's like to raise a small and annoying child. We've had The Walking Dead final season, A Plague Tale, Death Stranding, and now finally Life is Strange 2. I guess all the childless millennial developers are trying to fill the void in their lives with artificial surrogate children.
You see that? Looks like a clicker. Creepy.
Yeah.
How does Daniel know what a clicker sounds like? I saw the game console they had in their home. It wasn't a PlayStation. By this point in the first episode of Season 1, you had already witnessed and stopped an attempted murder, figured out Max's power, reconnected with an old friend, met most of the important characters, and were already looking for Rachel Amber. In Season 2, you spend a long time walking in the woods and setting up camp with your little brother. The gas station has the fake mayo bottles of mustard as well as proper mayo bottles. What exactly is this twisted universe?
I know what you're thinking. What the hell is this creep looking at?
No, I don't mean...
It's not as weird as it seems, though. These people, they only want to live a normal life. Just naked.
Whatever the story you're writing is about, you can at least close your laptop when a small child is standing right there in view of it.
Sir, we paid for this. And the map was free.
Well, let's go inside. You can show us what you bought.
No, thanks. We have to go.
Nope. You're going inside.
Did Hitler win World War II when we weren't looking? Is that the lore of this world? That would go a long way to explaining why every white person who doesn't write a progressive blog is the most cartoonish version of prejudice since the 1936 Olympics.
You're the reason we need to build that wall.
If this were any other game genre, I would not be surprised if Trump showed up as a final boss like Hitler did in Wolfenstein 3D. Somehow, killing Mecha Hitler in that game was less cringe in this game's anti-prejudice message. The gas station owner left the keys to the back door inside the very room he locked Sean inside. Daniel clearly uses power to knock over the gas station owner. The old guy doesn't mention it, and Sean has never once had a single thought about all the weird stuff that's happening around his little brother.
I come from a family with money, but no soul. I took off after school and never looked back. Now I write stories for zines and websites, do podcasts, protest, try to make some positive change. Whatever.
Wow. So you're like all political.
Everything is political, Sean.
Brody is the game's idea of a good white male. Let that sink in. Take a good close look. You may not like it, but this is peak anti-privilege. Bow down in worship, for he shall show us the way. Brody stops at an overlook of Arcadia Bay so we the viewers can feel a bit of nostalgia. But considering it's a piss break, I see it more as a metaphor of the devs pissing all over that nostalgia. If this is the best you can do, instead of calling your studio Don't Nod, maybe consider renaming it to Don't Bother.
It's not your fault. You don't have control over all this stuff. You can't blame yourself for everything that happens in this world.
I'd prefer the role of the traveling wise stranger full of positive life advice be given back to black people instead of soy-faced white hipsters.
Where are you going?
Quick question. I was thinking... get out of the country? Fuck it. Go down to Mexico, you know?
You know, Canada is a real place, and isn't even that far from you. It's not just a country that exists in the minds of people who like being cold and vitamin D deficient.
If you think that's the right thing to do, yes, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
This is truly horrible advice. Brody should be telling Daniel to go to the police before things get even more out of control, not drag his little brother all the way south to Mexico, which is not exactly any safer for two kids on their own. Maybe I was too hard on Brody. He actually acts just like a typical white person. Shows up, lectures a minority on what they should be doing, makes himself feel good about his deed, then leaves them and later writes about the experience on his blog having risked nothing. Some people say Brody is still out there, blogging about superhero movies and the political messaging in them to this day.
Your dad is dead! Why?
The Exposition News Network is interrupting children's cartoons for important news updates on police shootings. Daniel's power caused memory loss the first time he used it, so he never recalled the fight that caused their dad's shooting. He also didn't recall slamming the gas station owner to the ground with it. He will never suffer from memory loss again after this.
They all lived happily together, but one day, hunters took their dad away.
Every episode begins with a recap using wolves as stand-ins for the brothers. This series has always given every main character a spirit animal to represent them, but it's never been this corny with it. One of the major problems of Life is Strange 2 in relation to the first game is the structure of the narrative. The first season stayed in one town and gave you 5 episodes of character development for everyone, meaning you had time to learn about the world and feel invested in it. Life is Strange 2 is a road trip story, which can work when executed well. Emphasis on well. Every episode introduces a new cast of characters you have to learn all about before they are tossed out by the start of the next one. It takes a very compelling main lead to make the constantly changing world and cast seem interesting enough through his interactions with them. Sean has all the personality and life of a Halloween mask draped over a bedpost. This game serves as an excellent lesson on how to lose fans and alienate people.
I wish we could stay here longer. But Daniel's health is getting worse every day. And the food is running low.
Sean has no idea on how to monetize Daniel's telekinesis. All it would take is one trip to an ATM to get all the money they would need to quickly reach Mexico.
It's time for us to hit the road. You're not getting better.
Dragging your little brother with his persistent cough through the cold for days will certainly be much worse than staying here. The devs only gave Daniel a puppy at the end of the first episode so they could kill it for cheap emotion at the start of the second. Did killing their father not elicit the response you expected, Don't Nod? Well, this one failed too, because I was expecting the dog to die the second it showed up in the gas station, just like I was expecting their dad to die. Meeting expectations, especially when those expectations aren't set very high, isn't going to move the emotional needle. I can understand making a marker for Mushroom, but the cougar took off with his body in my playthrough, so why dig a huge hole for no reason? Also, that ground would have been permafrost, so it would have taken all day to dig even a modest hole. There is no way I can continue to believe that the police can't find these two. Sean carried his cell phone on him until the end of the first episode. They ride buses and walk along highways to get around, and the locals of this town would have to know by now that the grandparents of the wanted kids live here. So 2 Hispanic kids showing up and asking directions to said grandparents would trigger some alarms. And it's very likely that the grandparents' home would remain under surveillance, since it's only 1 state away from where the kids lived, and their only remaining family other than their mother.
Why did you run away if you're innocent?
Because the game is built on an incredibly shaky premise that doesn't stand up to logic.
You know the police would separate us. Maybe forever. Daniel would end up in foster care.
No, he wouldn't have. You're in your grandparents' home right now. Both of you would have been given into their custody since you were both minors.
Go down to Mexico, to Puerto Lobos. Dad has a family house there.
Your father's garage in Mexico would have already been known to the police and would be one of the places they would most likely have covered, not to mention any bounty hunter willing to spend any amount of time looking for you two. After the grandparents agreed to let them stay, Daniel comes barreling into the room as though he wasn't coughing and on the verge of collapse. That was some strong cough syrup. You might be wondering why the sin count is so low despite being midway through the second episode. The reason is simple. The plot is actually competently written and avoids contradicting itself. That, however, doesn't mean the story is any good. A church sermon can be very well written and without fault too, just boring to listen to unless you are one of the devout. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the game is very good at preaching to the choir while everyone else rolls their eyes after being dragged into it.
Whoa! Careful. Sorry, I forgot. That thing isn't too stable.
Gee, I wonder if that unstable leg of the heavy cabinet will come up again this episode. After trying so hard to be topical, the game didn't have the balls to show an actual MAGA hat and just has a red cap in Grandpa's room with the word censored. There was a bonus initial episode put out before Life is Strange 2 centered on the neighbor kid Chris that was far more interesting and more in line with the first game than anything in the sequel. It presented the story of a single parent who's drinking a bit too often, not being the best father but trying to, and a son who escapes into his own imagination. You know, something that real people can relate to. Putting 2 young children in the back of a truck makes for a pretty irresponsible adult. Also, it's illegal, and would get you pulled over by the police if they saw. Also, it's winter. I would have demanded a best of 3 rock, paper, scissors match with my brother over getting to sit in the cab.
People certainly don't buy as much handmade Christmas decorations as they used to. The mall has ruined every single shop in town. Can't do anything about it, and people seem surprised unemployment is going through the roof. I just wish this evolution could benefit everyone.
I might need to report this game to the feds, because it was clearly sponsored by the Bernie Sanders campaign without disclosure.
I want to go check on the room. Upstairs. I know it's Mom's. Please.
The game makes a big mystery out of Daniel and Sean's mother, but she just ran out on them and everyone acts like she committed an act of terrorism. Her own parents keep her old room locked and forbid anyone from going inside.
We clearly don't share politics, but at least Steven doesn't preach.
I know, right? It would be incredibly annoying if someone kept pushing a political agenda in your face when you never signed up for it. The mom's room is played up as a secret, but in the end, it's just the grandparents being stubborn. While that's realistic, it doesn't make for good drama in writing when the only payoff is a P.O. box.
It's time you learn to respect some rules.
You're telling that to a kid who fled from the police after manslaughter.
You don't know anything about how I feel.
Your daughter gave birth to 2 sons and then ran off, leaving them to be raised by their father alone. I think they would know how you feel. If anything, you're the one who doesn't seem to understand that hiding a note their mother sent recently was the wrong thing to do.
I can't hear that.
Grandpa, not wanting to be around this eye-rolling emotional moment, decided he'd rather be crushed underneath a heavy cabinet.
If the police searches the house, that makes the 2 of you accomplices.
They are already guilty of that and would be charged as such. The police even see you two running away. Cops are not like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park that doesn't see movement. Your brother is even wearing bright clothes against snow. And why are you running away on the road in front of your grandparents' house where the cops are pulling up? For a kid who believes himself to be a superhero after Daniel stopped him from falling with telekinesis and let him believe it was his own power, why would he try to stop a police car? Shouldn't he see the police as good guys? I guess Daniel's reaction time slowed down, because he caught Chris in midair the last time and did nothing to save him here. Also, there were more than enough cops on scene to chase after Sean and Daniel while looking after Chris.
Why does my power always bring trouble?
Max's power came with some severe consequences, from altering reality in the timeline to creating even worse events in the future. Daniel's power is so much easier to handle that the only reason it's causing problems is due to how dumb he is.
That's when the big brother discovered that the little one was not an ordinary wolf, but a super wolf.
Thinking more about these illustrated episode recaps, the game would have been a lot better had it actually been about a telekinetic wolf. 30 minutes of episode 3 is wasted on a flashback of Daniel and Sean having a brotherly fight. This entire scene just feels like padding to get the episode to 3 hours of playtime by reusing the family home again. Life is Strange 2's boob rendering technology is 5 years behind Metro Last Light. California legalized weed in 2016. This game takes place at the end of that same year. There's no reason to run an illegal weed farm with child labor in what looks like the Redwood National Forest.
Are you really shit-talking me, Cheech? Huh?
Every white male that appears in this game should be accompanied by Sephiroth's theme music.
You don't get paid to be late. Next time you won't be.
How can they be late and it be their fault? Your guy, Big Joe, is the one who drove them all here in his truck from the camp.
I'm only letting you and your brother work here because Finn put in a good word.
The pot farmer Merrill is against the idea of Daniel working here. If that were even remotely true, he wouldn't have hired Daniel in the first place or allow him to stay on the premises. As much hell as I give to Telltale in their games, they never once forced me to trim buds for several minutes. It takes as much bud as you trim here to possibly enjoy this.
My daddy was a meth head who beat the shit out of my boyfriend. Just because he wasn't white.
Is there anyone in this game who doesn't have some problem related to what people might whine about on Twitter? I can understand having one or two, but this feels like it has a float for every problem in the pity party parade.
Especially when you live off the grid.
We all should try. It's everybody's planet too.
Sweden is not perfect, but we try to be more eco-conscious.
This game is going to make me vote Republican out of spite at this rate. Lugging water barrels, peeling potatoes, long conversations. Damn, do I love video games.
Nobody's telling me whose dick to suck.
I know which dick the game is telling me to suck.
Daniel, dude, do you have to do this every week? Adults only.
It's Daniel's payday too. If he can trim buds with the rest of you, why can't he stand in line for his money?
He was snooping around your living room.
That's the same room they trim buds in during the day. Why is it such a major deal if Daniel was found inside it?
You all need a lesson. So first off, no payday.
Personally, were I running an illegal weed farm that was using child labor, I'd be worried that not paying the workers would see them turn me into the police. For a kid who earlier lifted a giant tree out of the water during practice, tossing an ashtray at Big Joe is pretty weak.
I'm not scared of cops. I can stop them anytime I want.
Says the kid who was easily overpowered by a large man just an hour ago and then let his brother get punched out.
No way. Too dangerous for Daniel.
Nah. Daniel is the dangerous one. Nobody can even touch him.
You watched Daniel get assaulted by Big Joe earlier at the weed farm. Even with the power, that doesn't mean Daniel has the capability to wield it against another human being. He pretty clearly doesn't want to hurt people. There are so many ways you could use Daniel's power to quickly earn cash that don't involve robbing dangerous criminals that it boggles my mind how uncreative a bunch of pot smokers are. I would not trust a homemade tattoo needle in a homeless camp full of rampant drug use and sexual promiscuity. A swim in the lake right after getting a sketchy tattoo is a great idea. Seriously, I hope he gets a flesh-eating staph infection. This game's ability to make every single moment drip with cringe is truly impressive. Even teenagers skinny dipping feels like I just walked into my grandparents' nude in a sauna.
You want me to come inside?
Yeah, I think that's the idea, Sean.
Sorry it sucked.
The devs need to tweet that apology out to everyone who bought this game.
Did you see Finn? He was with Daniel, but now I can't find him.
Surprising no one, Finn took off with Daniel to rob the weed farm. Maybe don't dismiss the guy who just the other day was talking about his dream to live in a nice beach house in Costa Rica.
At least they didn't wake Big Joe up. But if we do, he'll kill us.
This is a good way to get all your friends back at the camp killed. After all, it's right next to Big Joe's home. And he's going to go there demanding answers as soon as he realizes his trucks have been stolen. The same goes for Finn. How was he going to get all of his friends out of the camp before the theft was realized and Meryl and Big Joe came after them? That's pretty convenient that all those dash wires were pre-cut for you. Daniel's determination and power usage disappear at the oddest of times.
Thief and Brother of the Year. Nice.
You don't get to preach about this when you were employing said kid on a weed farm.
It's not like I want to do this, but if you rip me off, you rip them off. Then I pay.
They haven't ripped you off yet. If you really don't want to do this, kick them out of your home in the camp. Why escalate to homicide? Daniel always displays the weakest version of his power in the moments that matter. He pushed Sean over earlier, shot pine cones out of the air with rocks, and lifted a giant tree trunk. But when it comes to a guy with a gun, the best he can manage is knocking the gun out of his hands with no follow-up. Has no one ever showed this kid OG Star Wars? Force choke some people. Daniel is shot in the arm and will never be treated for it. So who called the cops that picked up Sean and the others at the weed farm? Everyone in the building was either knocked out or dead. Daniel was the only one that got away, and he certainly wouldn't tell the police. And no one else back at the camp even knew what had happened. That leaves Big Joe, who worked for Merrill and most likely wouldn't incriminate himself by getting the police involved. Sean has been in the hospital for a month now due to a piece of glass that blinded his left eye. A hospital does not keep you that long over removing an eye.
Your depth perception will always be affected.
This test wouldn't work in a video game even if Sean had two eyes because I'm playing it on a 2D screen.
Tomorrow you're going to Jolena Shore and you'll be arraigned in court for the murder of a Seattle police officer.
There was dash cam footage of that event. The officer was thrown across the street and his squad car flipped over. The cause of death had to be sudden trauma from the impact. How are you going to prove to a jury that a 16-year-old kid managed to kill a police officer so hard it flipped the car over? Even assuming an explosion, you would find evidence of that with simple forensics. A first-year trial attorney would get this laughed out of court due to lack of compelling evidence.
So you haven't found my brother?
We might have some leads.
I think the police should have been able to track down Daniel a while ago. There are only two people from the camp who are missing, Daniel and Jacob. They would likely assume Jacob and Daniel left together, and then they would have checked Jacob's family home to see if he had gone home. Jacob wrote a note in Sean's sketchbook that tells him that Jacob took Sean with him. This means that after destroying the weed farm and injuring everyone, Daniel headed back to camp without Sean and went along with the fidgety guy he barely knew all the way to Nevada. Sean may be able to hotwire an old truck, but more modern cars would prove pretty difficult. Sean is fond of having hallucinated father-son conversations in a car just like Chloe was in Before the Storm. I'd rather be playing Desert Bus than sit through another minute of this. Can you just introduce the next one-dimensional racist white person so I have something interesting to send?
Step out or I'll call the cops. You don't want that, boy.
If you create a piece of entertainment that focuses on politics and social issues, I sort of expect you are doing it with the idea of changing minds. If all you write are straw men that you can easily set fire to, you are simply making yourself feel good about the beliefs you already hold.
You speak Spanish, Pedro?
Why exactly does this scene even exist? It has no bearing on anything else. The devs stopped everything from moving forward just so they could add a few more racist people to the plot and really show what America's race issues are like through the eyes of white upper-class Frenchmen.
Okay, Chad.
Even his name is Chad. Why am I not surprised?
Sing something. What? Just pass the audition and you're free.
Since I've completely checked out by this point, and Sean is one of the worst video game characters of the decade, I endeavored to make him into a massive beta male with every decision given to me from now on. I assumed Life is Strange was a series about relatable young characters growing up and dealing with believable modern issues, and there just happened to be superpowers involved. This game has not once presented me with a relatable situation, and I don't believe it intends to, and that has nothing to do with my skin color. After all, I could relate to things in the first game despite not being a woman. How many of you have had to deal with small-town Christian cults that have brainwashed your sibling while on the lam from the law? How many times do I have to point out how ridiculous it is that the police can't find and capture Sean and his brother? The FBI detective had no leads on Daniel, yet he's been the showpiece of a church group that is attracting attention from all over the state for his display of miracles, and is using his real name and levitating crosses in front of a congregation. You're telling me not one person who saw this recalled the two missing Diaz brothers from news reports?
Sean?
Oh my.
Sean!
Daniel seems awfully glad to see Sean after leaving him injured back at the farm. Were I Sean, I would have considered that the end of the family ties.
Let's get out of here, Daniel.
I want to stay.
I can buy the idea that Daniel feels guilty for his screw-up, but he has to know that he's no angel or gifted child of the Lord. He's never been pious or religious in any way.
You're pissing me off. This is private property. I have a legal right to stop any intruders.
Lisbeth knows who Daniel and Sean are. Sean could very quickly determine that Daniel is better off in the hands of the authorities than a deranged cult and tip off the police to where he is. The real miracle here is Sean and Daniel's mother showing up out of the blue. Did she just stand there and wait until after her son was beat down to intervene?
For years, I fooled myself, thinking I'd find satisfaction into what society expected me to be, and that was my mistake.
So you just dumped us so you could be free?
Yes. That's exactly what I did.
If this game expects me to feel and understand Karen, it has another thing coming. She is a terrible person regardless of how the game frames her. Her decision to live free without regrets meant saddling her husband with 2 kids to take care of on his own. Were any child support payments made? You can be damn sure there would have been had the situation been reversed.
I hope I can make it up to you, Daniel, someday. I can start by getting his ass out of that church.
Well, you are technically the legal guardian of the 2 of them now. You've known Daniel was in the cult longer than Sean has and haven't done anything. You haven't even gone inside of the church. Did you never consider calling the cops? Daniel is a minor and isn't the one who's wanted for the death of a cop. He would be out and released into the care of his grandparents or mother.
You gotta trust me this one time.
No, I don't. Not after what you did. But yes.
No, but yes. Thanks for respecting my choices, game.
He was in bad shape, with a gunshot wound, and all by himself. I couldn't just leave him there.
How exactly was that treated? Did Jacob hike Daniel from California to Nevada while he was injured and bleeding? And the Reverend Mother is against her flock, trusting doctors and using modern medicine.
I'm telling you to be careful with the Reverend Mother. She's waited her whole life for somebody like Daniel.
Why hand Daniel over to the Reverend Mother if you knew what kind of person she was? Jacob left town originally because of her. And how did Lisbeth find out about Daniel's power to begin with? If Daniel is seeking atonement for what happened at the farm, you would think that atonement would begin with not using the power that caused it.
Of course it's locked. Her open door speech is just another lie.
The Reverend Mother is a hypocrite, but open door policies don't apply when the person is gone.
Conversion therapy?
It would have been a good idea to narrow the scope of the social ills this game wanted to hit upon. You could write an entire story on just one of them.
I have a good plan to get him out of your way. He'll give you more time.
Starting a fire would distract people and create a window of opportunity, but it would also draw emergency services who might arrest your sons.
Speak through this young vessel. I am your humble servant and will obey
What the hell
your
is this?
every...
Maybe Sean should have mentioned to Karen that her son is telekinetic, and maybe Karen should have wondered why a cult was treating your son like the Messiah. I don't think sane people would have this discussion in the middle of a burning building. What a great mom. She's now stood by twice while this man beat her son half to death.
I was so confused.
Yes, I can see why you were so confused. What with the way she was having your brother beat in the face and about to be shot before you realized the truth that she was manipulating you. Lisbeth somehow moved from the podium to the entrance door even though the family was in the aisle. I never saw her walk past them, and they certainly wouldn't have been surprised by her being there if she had.
You will all burn in this hell.
Even without the telekinetic child, I hardly think a small, unarmed woman would be capable of holding 3 people inside a burning church. When exactly is the fire department going to show up? 7 weeks later? You've been right at the border with Mexico for 7 weeks and you just chilled in your mom's trailer for no reason? Their mom left a plate of pancakes out for them when she went into town. Pancakes are the type of food you have to eat as soon as they're served. No one wants to eat a room temperature pancake. And who eats them like that with no syrup or butter? Sean even mentions his mom eats pancakes with hot sauce.
Things change, but being gay is still dangerous.
Such a brave game. Every single time Daniel has revealed his powers to people, it has resulted in bad stuff happening. There is no good reason to show the powers off to hippies living in the desert to help them make sculptures. This is the final episode, by the way. Half of it is spent wandering around a desert town, making junkyard art, and playing games with Daniel. What a rising climax. You could have at least set this during Burning Man if that's what you wanted.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, good morning.
When you went to the store, Karen, you weren't supposed to buy old characters from the previous game.
You boys have been here over a month, and I still can't get over Daniel's skills.
David, Chloe's stepdad, moved out to the desert and became a hippie no matter which ending you picked in Life is Strange 1. That seems a bit of a stretch given his character. Also, what are the odds that one guy would come across 2 superpowered children in his life?
What's your plan?
The cops are after me too, for what happened in Nevada. So they can catch me instead of you. Fair trade.
Cops and Border Patrol are 2 different groups, and there are plenty enough to handle multiple cases at the same time. Unless you plan to go on a shooting spree, you can't cause a distraction big enough to pull all the highway patrolmen and border guards away.
If the Earth is getting so damn hot, I mean, why is there snow?
Ugh. I applaud you, sir, for not buying into the climate propaganda.
Here's a Rush Limbaugh stand-in on the radio talking about climate change because why not? This game is like a liberal version of a Jack Chick comic. If you make me tune a police scanner, at least make that scanner useful later.
What are we gonna do in Puerto Lobos? We don't know anybody. What are we gonna do for money and stuff? I can't even speak Spanish. How can I make friends or do anything?
These are all excellent questions and problems that should have been thought of long before reaching the border.
Why would they build this?
Well, you know, it's a border, man.
Is there a wall like this up north?
Nah, not really.
So, why did they build one here?
I don't know, Daniel.
Because Canadians don't regularly cross it illegally. Was that so hard to point out, game? It would be a lot easier and more discreet to levitate yourselves in the truck over the wall than rip a giant hole in it, but I guess that would be less metaphorical now, wouldn't it? On a flat desert landscape, there is no one present before the cutscene. The couple that's doing the volunteer border patrol must have made that shot from beyond the horizon. This marks the second time that Daniel has been shot in his right shoulder. I suspect the damage is not going to be as permanent as it would be for a normal person. I just want to point out what a truly pathetic protagonist Sean has been. A living maxi-pad of a character. I don't expect a player character in an adventure game to be a complete badass, but I do expect them to at least assert themselves once in a while.
It's America. We speak English.
We're just talking.
No, the problem is you people breaking into my country.
We come here to work, not steal or live at your home.
Your facts are just bigotry and hatred.
Yeah, I hate what you did to my country.
You can essentially consider this conversation the final boss fight of the game, the Omega Strawman, a shouting match between the perfect, peaceful, illegal immigrant family against the violent, token anti-immigrant activist. This is what happens when everything is political. It becomes a sucking void of humor, enjoyment, and creativity.
Killing that officer in Seattle, assaulting a gas station clerk, caught in another weird explosion at a pot farm in California. Then you join a religious commune in Nevada, which ends up burnt to the ground. And we're not even halfway down the list.
Actually, that is the complete list, unless you're telling me there was stuff that happened in between episodes that was way more interesting. Also, the cop has nothing to say about the huge hole ripped in the border wall they caught them in front of.
Your case is filled to the brim with evidence.
Really? Because with the cop's death, they have fleeing the crime scene, and that's it. In the gas station, it's assault and battery. Working the pot farm may have charges that don't add up to much, and their mother confessed to the church arson.
It sounds crazy, but I can explain.
Sean really needs to ask for a lawyer.
Something blew up. Seriously. How?
By this point, the police should have suspected there was something strange about Daniel. You have the cop and his car that were sent flying, the gas station owner knocked to the ground, a destroyed pot farm, a church that was worshipping him, and a giant hole ripped in the border wall not far from here. The last thing I would do where I'm making this game would be to call attention to Akira by putting Daniel in what can only be described as a Tetsuo cosplay. You've only made me realize that this game is but a pale shadow of what Akira already was.
Have escaped using violent force from the El Rey police station. They are considered armed and dangerous. Repeat.
Maybe don't turn off the police scanner while escaping from the police. You might have known that the cops were waiting for you two at the border crossing.
It's the 4th of July.
How miraculously ironic. Daniel ripped a hole in the border wall earlier. Why not just do that again instead of driving to the actual border crossing after breaking out of the police station? Did you actually think they would let you drive across it?
So, how does the story of the Wolf brothers end?
I got what I consider the best ending. Sean escaping to Mexico while Daniel gets stuck living under house arrest in America. That being said, none of the endings are satisfying, or feel like they were the result of my decisions. It would be a lot easier to just lift the truck and the two of you over the border instead of this, but I suppose they felt that would be too much like the E.T. ending. After Daniel blasted his way out of the police station and knocked over police cars at the border, they surely have to know that there's something unusual about Daniel. There is no way Daniel would be allowed to live under house arrest with his grandparents, and Sean would be a wanted terrorist at this point. Something Mexico wouldn't be too thrilled with living inside their border. He even lives out of his dad's old home under his real name and sends letters to Sean, meaning it would be incredibly easy for people to find him down there.
Everything is political.